Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, has been ordered by the Supreme Court to step down following a staggering £124,000 corruption scandal exposed live on national television. What millions of viewers saw was far from a routine political affair. It was a historic confrontation that stripped the facade off British politics in real time. The revelation shook the nation, stunned Parliament, and threw the Labour Party into turmoil. How could a leader once trusted to restore integrity now face accusations of betraying the very principles he claimed to uphold? What truly happened inside that courtroom? And how will this scandal reshape the future of British politics? Stay tuned, because the truth is darker, bigger, and far more explosive than anyone anticipated. It began quietly, like a whisper, a faint murmur dismissed by many as mere political gossip. A minor investigation into financial irregularities linked to Starmer's inner circle was expected to be easily contained behind closed doors. But whispers quickly grew into a storm. Evidence surfaced: emails, secret bank transfers, hidden accounts, all pointing directly at the Labour leader himself. Initially, party officials tried to downplay the story, labeling it a smear campaign. But in an unprecedented twist, the case reached the Supreme Court. This was no longer just politics, this was law, accountability, and the highest judges in the land stepping in to determine the fate of one of Britain's most powerful figures. The moment courtroom cameras rolled, the scandal erupted into the public eye. Millions tuned in as every detail was revealed, unfiltered, unedited, undeniable. The nation watched in disbelief as emails exposed backroom promises, witnesses testified to clandestine deals, and financial records traced funds through shell accounts. The £124,000 might sound like just a figure, but its significance was devastating. It wasn't simply about money. It was about influence. It was about betrayal. It was about a leader violating the trust of those who put him in power. Inside the Supreme Court, tension was palpable. Gasps echoed as document after document, testimony after testimony, dismantled the Labour leader's denials. Each revelation hit like a hammer blow. The man once portrayed as the clean alternative to political scandal was now exposed as part of the very corruption he promised to fight, and the cameras captured every moment. Every flicker of doubt on his face, every uneasy pause, every moment when the mountain of evidence became impossible to ignore. When the ruling finally came, it hit like a thunderclap. The Supreme Court, after reviewing all the evidence, declared that Keir Starmer's actions were not only unethical but unlawful. Their verdict was unmistakable: he must resign. No backroom deal, no political loophole, no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. In that instant, the courtroom erupted, and the nation understood that history had been made. The fallout was immediate. Political allies who once defended him scrambled to distance themselves, their statements hesitant and fearful. Some tried to rally behind him, hoping to contain the damage, but most saw the writing on the wall. Westminster descended into chaos. Within the Labour Party, factions erupted, some demanding new leadership, others bracing for internal conflict. Opposition parties pounced, branding Labour as broken, corrupt, and unfit to govern. Outside the corridors of power, public anger burned even hotter. Across Britain, citizens already weary of endless scandals saw this as the ultimate betrayal. Protests erupted, chants demanding accountability filled the streets, and social media ignited with outrage. Words like resign, corruption, and justice trended nationwide, fueling a firestorm no spin doctor could contain. The public wasn't just observing, they were demanding change. A once untouchable leader now teetered on the brink of political annihilation. His resignation wasn't merely a personal downfall, it was a national reckoning. The shockwaves of this scandal had only begun, and the full consequences were yet to unfold. If a man like Keir Starmer could fall, the question hung heavy over British politics: who might be next? The Supreme Court hearings were unprecedented in British history. This wasn't a quiet legal process hidden behind closed doors, it was a national spectacle, a trial broadcast live as the entire country watched. Cameras rolled as the prosecution presented a case so detailed and damning that even seasoned political commentators admitted they had never seen anything like it. The evidence was sharp, undeniable, and relentless. One by one, documents were projected onto screens. Bank statements revealed suspicious deposits, and emails exposed coded messages between Starmer's closest advisors, messages suggesting far more than mismanagement. Witnesses, including former insiders, recounted secret meetings in dimly lit rooms, payments disguised as donations, and promises traded like currency. Each testimony painted a picture not of a man blindsided by corruption, but of one orchestrating it. The Labour leader who vowed to clean up politics now appeared as the architect of its decay. The most shocking moment arrived when encrypted messages were decrypted and displayed to the judges. The texts revealed conversations that went far beyond politics: loyalty bought with cash, influence handed out like favors, power maintained through manipulation. Gasps echoed through the courtroom as the words scrolled across the screens. Millions watching from their living rooms saw the undeniable truth. This wasn't speculation, it was proof. And Keir Starmer sat there, forced to witness his carefully constructed image crumble before him. His expression revealed the weight of the moment. He shifted uneasily, eyes darting from screens to the floor, avoiding both the public and press. Each revelation chipped away at the man once heralded as the moral alternative to political corruption. With every passing hour, the silence from his allies grew deafening, and the air in the courtroom thickened with the sense that history was unfolding. The judges, unwavering and deliberate, made it clear this was more than a scandal, it was a betrayal of public trust. They questioned not only the legality of Starmer's actions but the ethical decay that allowed them to happen. Their words cut deep. This wasn't the conduct of a leader. This was the conduct of someone who placed personal ambition above the values of democracy. And when they declared that Starmer must resign, the ruling landed like a hammer, reverberating across the nation. News outlets broke into live coverage, headlines flashing in bold: Supreme Court orders Starmer to resign. Social media exploded within seconds. Hashtags trended worldwide. Commentators called it the day British politics changed forever. For the first time in living memory, a sitting opposition leader had been commanded to step down by the country's highest court. Unprecedented, shocking, and irreversible. Outside the courthouse, the atmosphere was electric. Crowds had gathered, some in disbelief, others chanting for justice. Reporters pushed through the chaos, microphones extended, capturing raw emotion. Some Labour supporters wept openly, unable to fathom their leader's fall. Others shouted in anger, demanding his immediate removal. The divide was stark and widening. Back inside Westminster, the ripple effects tore through Labour like an earthquake. Senior figures huddled behind closed doors, scrambling to decide the next move. Whispers of resignation letters, emergency meetings, and leadership challenges spread like wildfire. The party that once stood united behind Starmer now teetered on the brink of collapse. The scandal was no longer just about him, it was about the future of Labour itself. And yet, amid the chaos, one fact remained: the cameras had captured everything. Every detail, every revelation, every ruling broadcast to millions. There was no hiding, no rewriting history, no chance to spin the story. The truth was out, and the nation had seen it with their own eyes. The courtroom spectacle wasn't just the trial of Keir Starmer, it was the trial of trust in British politics. As the dust settled from the Supreme Court's ruling, the country faced a haunting question: if the leader of the opposition could fall to corruption this brazen, how deep did the rot go? The ruling did more than bring down Starmer. It detonated a political time bomb within the Labour Party. Overnight, the party descended into chaos. What had once been a tightly controlled operation under Starmer's command was suddenly leaderless and fractured. The order to resign created a vacuum at the heart of Britain's main opposition, and into that void poured fear, anger, and bitter rivalries. Behind Westminster's closed doors, senior Labour figures scrambled to position themselves for the inevitable power struggle. Emergency meetings ran late into the night, phones rang endlessly as MPs weighed their options. Should they remain loyal to a disgraced leader in the faint hope of survival, or distance themselves to protect their own reputations? The atmosphere was toxic. Trust evaporated. Old alliances splintered under the pressure. In public, Labour's front bench tried to display unity, but the cracks were obvious. Some MPs defended Starmer, claiming the ruling was politically motivated, a conspiracy designed to weaken Labour at a critical moment. Others broke ranks, openly demanding his immediate resignation and a new leader capable of restoring credibility. The division was undeniable, growing sharper by the hour. The party's grassroots, the volunteers who knocked on doors and handed out leaflets, felt betrayed. Social media exploded with anger from longtime supporters who had believed Starmer embodied honesty and integrity. Many asked the same haunting question: how could this have happened under our noses? Some called for sweeping reforms within labor, tighter oversight, and a complete purge of corrupt elements. Others threatened to resign from the party altogether, outraged by the betrayal. The Conservative Party wasted no time exploiting the chaos. Ministers lined up in Parliament to deliver scathing statements, portraying Labour as fundamentally broken and unfit to govern. Headlines screamed phrases like Labour in free fall and opposition in disarray. Tory strategists pushed for snap elections, sensing that Labour's collapse could hand them a decisive advantage. For the Conservatives, this was political gold and opportunity to present themselves as the stable alternative while Labour crumbled. Smaller parties also seized the moment. The Liberal Democrats called for sweeping reforms to restore public trust, while the Greens highlighted the dangers of corporate influence in politics. Even independent MPs gained traction, positioning themselves as voices untouched by the corruption that had brought Labour low. The political battlefield was shifting rapidly, and Labour's opponents circled like sharks smelling blood. Inside the party, the leadership question loomed large. With Starmer disgraced, Labour faced a brutal choice: attempt to rehabilitate him against impossible odds, or cut him loose and seek a new leader. Contenders began to emerge, each offering competing visions for Labour's future. Some advocated a return to traditional left-wing values, while others pushed a centrist path to regain credibility with the wider electorate. The one truth uniting them: Labour was fighting not just for power, but for survival. The crisis also forced the party to confront deeper, systemic issues. The scandal wasn't just about one man. It exposed a culture that allowed corruption to fester unchecked. How had £124,000 flowed through secret channels without detection? Where were the watchdogs? How many knew and stayed silent? The questions mounted, along with the growing sense that Labour's problems ran far deeper than Starmer alone. Outside the political bubble, public anger escalated. Protests erupted in London, Manchester, Birmingham, and beyond. Crowds demanded accountability, holding signs that read "No more lies and clean up politics." Citizens who had once trusted Labour to champion fairness now accused it of being no different from the scandals it once condemned. The betrayal felt personal, and the people demanded consequences. Labour, once positioned to challenge for power, now appeared shattered. Its leader disgraced, members divided, voters enraged, the party faced an existential crisis. Could it rebuild trust in time for the next election? Could it survive the internal civil war raging within its ranks? Or was this the beginning of the end for a party that had once been a cornerstone of British democracy? The only certainty was uncertainty. The chaos within Labour was no passing storm. It was a hurricane tearing through the party's foundations, leaving one truth undeniable: the £124,000 scandal had not just destroyed Keir Starmer. If the Supreme Court ruling rattled Westminster, it was public reaction that transformed the scandal into a national firestorm. Across the UK, outrage erupted with a force politicians couldn't control. Ordinary citizens, already weary of broken promises and repeated scandals, felt the betrayal cut deeper than most. For many, Starmer had been the politician promising to restore dignity and honesty to public life. Seeing him exposed in such a dramatic way left people not only angry but profoundly disillusioned. The streets told the story. Within hours of the verdict, protests ignited in London, Manchester, Liverpool, and Birmingham. Crowds surged outside Labour headquarters, placards raised high with slogans like "Resign now" and "No one above the law." Chants echoed through city centres: "Justice! Justice! Justice!" This wasn't just a group of activists. It was ordinary people, workers, students, pensioners, families, united by a single demand: accountability. The scandal had spilled out of the courtroom and into the very heart of the nation. On social media, the fallout was relentless. Hashtags like Starmer scandal, .124k corruption, and resign now trended for days. Millions of posts across Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok dissected every detail of the case. Clips from the live courtroom broadcast went viral, shared with captions such as "the moment it all came crashing down" or "history unfolding before our eyes." Supporters who once defended Labour's leader now admitted their faith had been shattered. Others mocked the party, claiming the scandal proved they were all the same. The media seized on the storm, dedicating endless hours to analysis, speculation, and heated debate. Morning news shows featured political commentators calling the ruling a once-in-a-century event. Evening panels brought in former MPs and legal experts to dissect every angle of the scandal. Headlines screamed across newspapers: "Fall of a leader." Labour in ruins. £124,000 betrayal. The saturation was complete. No one could escape the story. But beyond the noise of social media and the frenzy of news coverage, something more dangerous was taking shape: an erosion of trust. For many citizens, this wasn't just about Keir Starmer, it was about the entire political establishment. If a man who campaigned on integrity could fall so spectacularly, who could be trusted? Calls for reform grew louder. Protesters demanded stricter rules on political donations, harsher penalties for corruption, and independent watchdogs. Commentators warned that unless drastic changes were implemented, public faith in democracy itself could collapse. Inside Parliament, the ripple effects were devastating. The government attempted to distance itself from the scandal, but the questions kept coming. How many others knew about the secret payments? Was Starmer the only one involved, or simply the one caught? Suspicion and paranoia spread through Westminster. MPs from all parties were suddenly under pressure to prove their own hands were clean. Trust was no longer assumed, it had to be earned. The volatility spilled into everyday life. In pubs, offices, and family homes, people debated the implications for Britain's future. Some argued politics was beyond repair, that no party could be trusted to govern. Others saw this as a wake-up call, an opportunity to demand real change and rebuild a system that had repeatedly failed. The scandal had become a cultural reckoning. Protests erupted outside Westminster itself. Tens of thousands gathered, chanting beneath the towering walls of Parliament. Their demand was simple: accountability. The air crackled with anger as banners declared, "Clean up politics and enough is enough." Riot police stood on standby, prepared for clashes. Scenes were broadcast globally, with international outlets reporting Britain as a democracy in crisis. Even abroad, the fallout was felt. Allies watched nervously, questioning stability in one of Europe's key powers. The scandal had become a worldwide story, raising urgent questions about corruption and accountability in modern democracies. The message was clear: if this could happen in Britain, it could happen anywhere. By now, the scandal was no longer just about Keir Starmer or Labour. It was about the future of British democracy itself. The people had spoken. They would not accept excuses, they would not tolerate silence, and they would not forgive betrayal. The outrage was real, and it was not fading. Yet one question remained, hanging over the nation: could Keir Starmer fight back, or was his political career already finished?